Discovering Alabama is a production of the Alabama Museum of Natural History.
The first rays of a new day find their way across the Chattahoochee River and into Alabama. Sunrise runs the rivers and creeks, revealing the secrets of mysterious places with exotic-sounding names like Halawaki, Wakuchi, and Liliuchi. Morning spotlight falls across an ever-changing landscape. Yet it is more than cascading waters that shimmer in the sun. The very ground glistens with a richness of resources that seem just ripe for the picking.
Hi, I'm Doug Phillips. Today we're going to visit a captivating area of our state that quite literally sparkles in the sun.
This is Lee County, Alabama, a land of transitions. Here, ancient mountains once encountered ancient seas. Today, we know it as a point of transition from the Piedmont to the plain. As the sun sweeps east to west across Lee County, it transitions between two major river basins. And it sheds light upon a region of Alabama that has been important in the transition of our history, as a state and as a nation.
The 21st century finds Lee County poised on the brink of transition. The landscape may be changed forever, and some would say the change is as inevitable as the receding waters from an ancient ocean.
Others might disagree. They might suggest that the transition to the future does not have to mean turning our backs on the past.
Join me for a look at the past, present, and potential of Lee County, Alabama.
This program is about a land unknown to many people, a land that in many ways has maintained its native natural wonders, a place of bountiful backcountry, forests, streams, and wildlife more diverse than can be found in much of the inhabited world. Come along with me as we explore the wild wonders of this land. Come along as we discover Alabama.
Welcome to Discovering Alabama, and welcome to Lee County. What makes Lee different from any other county in Alabama? Well, the clues are all around as we traverse the more than 600 square miles of this East Alabama county.
Halfway down Alabama's eastern border, Lee County rests along Interstate 85, beginning about 50 miles or so northeast of Montgomery. Today, Lee may be best known as the home county of Auburn University. But there are a lot of other good reasons to get to know this area of our state.
Lee County provides an opportunity to explore a variety of natural wonders that help explain the uniqueness of all of Alabama. Because, like all of Alabama, this is a place of significant finales and new beginnings. This is a point of transformation and change. It's a land of transitions.
One of the more readily recognizable points of transition here in Lee County is the fall line. That final tier of waterfalls that runs across Alabama and separates the coastal plain to the south from the Rocky Highland regions of the north. The fall line enters Alabama in the east through Lee County, where it separates the Piedmont province from the coastal plain province.
What's so interesting about Lee County is you have that coastal plain with the Cretaceous rocks, which are about, say, 80 million years old, resting on some of the oldest rocks in the state of Alabama. These rocks in the basement there date back to 1.1 billion years old and probably represent some of the early development of the North American continent on the east side. What's also interesting there is what they have what's geologically called a window. What they believe possibly happened is the rocks south, or right next to the Cretaceous, those rocks represent the same as the rocks on the other side up towards the northern part of the county. And what's right there in the middle is, that goes through Auburn, is actually a window. You're actually looking at rocks older than the rocks on either side of it.
The remnants of mills that once employed the energy of the fall line can be found across the county, and some of them are still in pretty good shape.
The transition of topography and geology parts the waters of Lee County from the north to the south at the fall line, and the waters divide to the east and to the west into two of the South's major river basins.
To the east, the Chattahoochee River Basin, and to the west, the Mobile River Basin. Rivers, streams, and creeks with names like Halawaki and Wacoochee find their way to the Gulf of Mexico via the Chattahoochee River, while others with names like Salgahatchee and Chewacla find their way to the Gulf through the Tallapoosa. A variety of landscapes naturally leads us to a variety of life.
There's a diversity here of the flora and the fauna. Interestingly, there's a lot of deer in Turkey, as you would expect, the larger animals. We get a variety of plant life that's here. That we have some of the plants all the way from the small trilliums up to the larger plants, the trees, and we get a huge diversity. Even this little area here where, in this community, there's a large diversity of plant life. And although we're in a pine, oak, hickory, cove area, type area, but it's very diverse.
The richness of resources found here attracted human interest long before the region was known as East Alabama.
As you might gather from the names of many of the rivers and creeks, there was a powerful Indian presence here at the time when the first Europeans ventured into the area.
You would assume that this area is the first to be settled because it's the area that abuts Georgia. And if you think of settlement that is southwest, movement comes down from the Carolinas and Virginia into Georgia. As that land is worn out, it comes southwest right on into Alabama. That would be the southwestern sweep of movement of populations. But that's not what happened. And the reason that didn't happen is because the last area that was cleared of Indian populations is this area of east central Alabama. The Creek Nation really resisted a removal, whereas the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, the Cherokees all negotiated, sold the land, moved west. The Creeks resisted. So after the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in 1814, and the Treaty of Fort Jackson in August of 1814, everything west of the Coosa River, the Alabama River, is open to settlement. But everything east of it is still under Creek control by treaty agreement. And so it's not until after 1836 that this area of eastern Alabama that includes what is now Lee County was actually open to settlement. So actually, the area that you would expect to be the first settled is in fact the last settled. And that late settlement really helps define this area of the state.
With the United States today extending all the way to the Pacific Ocean, it's hard to believe that this was once the wild, wild west.
Basically from the turn of the 19th century, around 1800 forward, Alabama was typical of most frontiers. It was unsettled, it was disorderly, it was violent, it was not pious. And part of that has to do with just the nature of a frontier. Frightfully high rates of infant mortality. Most women lost their children before they were 1 year old. Some families would not even name a baby until it was a year old because they thought there was too strong a chance it would die, and they just didn't want that kind of emotional attachment. So for a variety of reasons, life was capricious, nature was capricious, everything was uncertain, mortality rates were high, Indian attacks were common.
Uncertainty notwithstanding, settlers did flow into East Alabama. Unlike their predecessors in other parts of the territory, though, these settlers didn't follow the rivers. They hit the road, the federal road.
When the federal government demanded that the federal road be expanded and extended, what actually happened was lots of people came and squatted illegally in the Creek territory. The Creeks never gave permission for the federal government to do that. And that precipitated the sort of Red Stick rebellion of the Creek Nation that led to the ultimate removal of all the Creeks after 1836.
While the federal road brought the first wave of settlers into the region, it was a new form of transportation that brought the second wave.
Opelika was selected for the railroad to come, and it made a huge difference right away. In fact, in the 1850s, up until the time of the Civil War, there was a major boom period of building going on in the city, particularly cotton warehouses, railroad terminals, baggage terminals, freight terminals. Auburn had more of a sedate reputation of an academic community. We were a booming industrial town for a while, and Opelika had a very difficult reputation. There were brothels and saloons lining Railroad Avenue on the north and the south side, and passenger trains not stopping in town, but expresses going through town were well, the conductors on board were known to tell the passengers to duck down below the windows because very often the proponents of various brothels or north-south proponents would fire bullets across the tracks at each other, and sometimes they passed through passenger trains. That's a well-known story.
While the early history of East Alabama is fascinating, well, technically it sort of isn't really the history of Lee County. Alabama became the nation's 22nd state in 1819, but Lee County did not become an Alabama county until 1866.
The county was carved from portions of Tallapoosa, Chambers, Russell, and Macon counties just a year after the Civil War, and the Alabama legislature saw fit to name this new county after Confederate General Robert E. Lee. There were a few things that Lee County brought with it from its pre-Civil War roots. The Indian names that continue to dot the countryside are one obvious example. And there is another. There is the abundance of beauty so pleasingly prevalent in this land of transitions. Here among the fertile soils of the lower Piedmont and the upper coastal plain, the Methodist Church planted a seed that continues to bear fruit today.
East Alabama Male College, that was supported or a project of the Methodist Church. They actually had another church over at Greensboro. It was known as Old Southern University. They got into financial trouble, and the church here at Auburn deeded the property, 12 acres, and Old Main, which is now Sanford Hall, deeded the state of Alabama. Well, when the Morrill Act was passed in 1862, the legislature decided that the land-grant college would be here. The Morrill Act said it had to be in agriculture and engineering. And the philosophy behind the Morrill Act was to get education out to the masses, to the people, in particular at agriculture. There was no research, there was no scientific basis for farming and that type of thing. And rural people, we had problems with poverty and low incomes. So in 1872, it was Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical College. Then in 1899, the legislature saw fit to change the name. It didn't become effective till 1900 to Alabama Polytechnic Institute. Then in 1960, it became Auburn University.
Throughout most of the 20th century, Auburn University, you might say, allowed Lee County to have the best of two worlds.
Students bring in a huge influx of money and people into the community. And it also establishes a lot of other amenities because the people get to see plays and theater and ball games and anything, those amenities that come with urban life.
But then I could go to town and I had access to a library, to a college, even though it was small then and everything, and I thought it was the perfect way to grow up. And looking back on it for 60 years, I still think it was the perfect way to grow up. You had the best of two worlds, I guess you could say.
The best of two worlds. That's what folks who've lived around here for a while remember having. That's what they remember. But today, well, that's a different story.
All the development and everything has increased the crime rates. You pick up the newspaper every day and somebody's been robbed or somebody stuck up with a gun coming out of the movie. And it used to be a few years back, I would walk all over Auburn after dark, and I wouldn't anymore do it now for anything.
Yet again, Lee County finds itself a land at a point of transition. This time, the transition from what it has been to what it will be.
Lee County is growing fast. The land trust that I work with covers 5 counties, and Lee County is the one in that land trust where I'm able to get the most response from citizens because we're feeling it. We're seeing some of our beautiful places disappear before our very eyes. I think the County Commission, the City of Opelika, the City of Auburn are trying. They're trying hard to do things right, but it's really tough.
Yes, the issues today are coming fast. They are numerous, complicated, sometimes contentious, and stir passions.
Among those issues stirring passions are the quarries.
Years ago, it was a small quarry, small trucks, but over the years, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and the trucks have gotten bigger, and they went deeper, so it's just been an evolution of expansion.
When I pulled up to the entrance to our bypass the other day, there were 4 quarry trucks in front of me.
I think also that some of these industries that may be taking some of our natural resources out of Lee County, I think they should be taxed highly for it, because they're hauling away Lee County while Alabama doesn't have enough money to buy textbooks. Doesn't seem right to me.
If the quarries don't get your blood boiling, how about the garbage dump?
When they initially proposed to put the garbage dump in, it was allegedly supposed to, it was reportedly, and they implied it was going to be a Lee County garbage dump. Well, the paper hadn't dried on the contract yet before they began to bring in garbage from elsewhere.
Or maybe it's the water issues that stir you up, water quantity and water quality.
Everybody's taking water for granted, and it's a global issue, and as you bring it down closer and closer to home, I mean, it becomes more and more of an issue. Lee County has got a special one because they're in 2 separate water basins there, and they'll have 2 issues to deal with.
There's a phrase that I like to use, and that everybody is in somebody else's watershed. So if they build and pave a humongous area of land, then that land can no longer absorb the rain, it can no longer be a productive green space. That water becomes storm water runoff. It heads directly out quickly and fast into a nearby creek, which then just travels further on and winds up in the Gulf.
Here in Lee County, where the science and the practice of agriculture have been so important, the plight of the farmer can certainly provoke concern.
The way things are done now, you can't make it on a small acreage or a small operation. You got to get big or get out. And I guess that's the one thing that distresses me more than anything else is all those people that were enjoying life as a farmer and farm family. They can't do that anymore.
Quarries, garbage dumps, water wars, the demise of farming, and now Lee County faces another quandary as it transitions from its past to its future.
Well, we hope that we're going to see continued success and not only the recruitment of manufacturing jobs, but our existing businesses continue to expand. We see more retail. Tigertown is a great development. It's that whole corner out there is booming. You know, it's going to further create other retail opportunities between Tigertown and going back towards Auburn. The retail centers between the existing Colonial Mall and Auburn and Tigertown it's just going to be I'd hate to drive it during Christmas time.
I don't understand. I can't imagine why anybody would consider an increase in the amount of traffic to be a measure of progress.
I think it's a great honor to be in a position of working on behalf of the community in an economic development perspective to bring jobs into the community and help the community to grow.
Growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of a cancer cell, and it should not be the ideology of any metropolitan areas, any cities, or any units at all. It's just kind of like economic obesity. That's what we're faced with. Obesity is not good for any of us, and calling gaining weight from 100 pounds to 350 progress, of course, is foolish. But we take it and use the same philosophy when we're applying it to our cities, towns, and municipalities. We let them become obese, and we call it progress.
We could spend hours in heated debate about these and any number of quandaries facing Lee County today. Perhaps, though, we'd be better served to consider what may be the overriding concern for the future. Can Lee County retain the native lands and waters that are defining qualities of its rural heritage? Or will accelerating change eventually transform the entire county into a modern megaplex?
Lee County, land of transition, from the Piedmont to the coastal plain, from the Chattahoochee River Basin to the Mobile River Basin, from the past to, well,
what will the future bring? Across Lee County, across Alabama? That question is being asked daily. And the answers we come up with may alter the landscape far more quickly than the ancient seas that once receded from the fall line.
Discovering Alabama is a production of the Alabama Museum of Natural History, the University of Alabama. This program is supported by grants from the Solon and Martha Dixon Foundation, the Alabama Wildlife Federation, working for wildlife since 1935, the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, State Lands Division, and Legacy, Partners in Environmental Education.